What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to the latest episode of the Smark Out Moment SmackDown podcast, where it's the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast, with me, Callum Wiggins, and my co-host, as always, Robert DeFelice.
Callum, we are inching so much closer to the greatest SummerSlam of all time, and we got a big one because it's champion versus champion, but it's not title for title.
No, absolutely. So that'll be the big draw for the main event as The Rock, the Undisputed Champion, takes on the Intercontinental Champion Chris Benoit in the main event of this edition of SmackDown, which is the August 15th, 2002 edition. So we'll be doing the review as always going forward, but that'll be the big meat of this entire episode. But before that, we have to just remind you that if you haven't already, leave a like on the video, drop a comment below, let us know if you're looking forward to this edition, if you watched the episode yourself, what you're looking forward to, what you think of our thoughts on the entire thing. If you're listening through the podcast feed, any of the podcast feeds like Spotify or iTunes or anything like that, drop us a rating. Let us know how we're doing on that front. Head on over to YouTube if you want to leave a comment and join in the conversation. If you haven't been watching this series from the beginning, there's a playlist on the Smark Out Moment channel, so you can go straight back to the beginning, listen to the first episode, and then join us back here. We'll still be here when you come back. And if you haven't checked out this episode of SmackDown already, then there's a link in the description to the WWE Network edition of this show. So, just a bit of the admin out of the way, just a bit more admin, which is any major news that was happening from the time. So, oddly how cyclical these things actually work. As we know, earlier this year, WWE let go of a large number of employees, both on screen and behind the scenes, in order to deal with the coronavirus thing coronavirus crisis, the coronavirus thing, you know.
That small thing.
Yeah, that little thing that's going on. In this time, due to the fact that WWE's turnover had dropped since the Attitude Era, 15 front office employees were let go. So it's only 15. It's not a huge amount, but it's still 15 people that have to be let out of work, which is never a good thing. And this was an attempt to slash $20 million out of their expenses at this point in time due to revenue shortfall. So it's always
the world still open, Callum?
Yeah, the world is still open. They're still trying to. Vince doesn't always want to let go of losses every so often. It's easier to let go of people than his dreams.
My God, that's.
I know it's sick to say that, but
what
as
a
we know nowadays,
line.
Let's go of people before his dreams.
Yeah.
His dream to be successful in anything that's not wrestling.
In anything but wrestling, but with wrestling as the anchor.
So that's kind of like the big news story from WWE. The other story, which is a lot smaller, is that Lita was given a chance to start commentary due to her obviously recovering from neck surgery, and so she commentated on an episode of Velocity alongside Mark Lloyd.
And I'm guessing that went about as well as her commentary in 2017?
Yeah, for the Mae Young Classic.
Yeah.
Apparently the live commentary they did was so bad that they had to re-record the entire episode.
Oh God, that sucks.
So Lita was not invited back for any further editions. She did eventually join the commentary team for a while with Jonathan Coachman on Heat. So I guess they gave her another chance at the very least, or decided that Mark Lloyd sucked.
Well, honestly, the latter is not that much of a stretch.
No. The other thing that I found interesting, as obviously I go back to the Wrestling Observer newsletters in order to pick out my news from this thing, is that Meltzer's description of WWE's potential signing some TNA stars in the infancy of the TNA promotion. So I just wanted to see how some of these things look 18 years later, as we say.
Wow.
So, yeah, just to see how things have changed. So WWE said that they've shown no interest in Christopher Daniels, which
never
then
changed.
Again, yeah, this never changed. Said that Styles was offered a developmental deal, but he turned it down.
That we've seen footage of him doing the WWF C tier shows.
Meltzer said that he probably wouldn't sign for WWE until he managed to improve his ability to work different style wrestlers and his facial expressions in the ring.
I believe the latter half of that is true. I think Styles is lucky in that the industry, partially because of him, the industry just changed to adapt to that style. But even still, it took 14 years from this point.
They say that Low-Key had never ever been invited to a tryout, let alone a developmental deal.
And he gets there before all of them.
As Caval. That wonderful time in WWE's history where Caval
Yeah,
was with local.
very brief run, but it happened.
They said that Yang is an outstanding talent, but he's an All Japan guy that does TNA stuff between All Japan tours.
He does get there very soon.
Yeah. They mentioned Sonny Siaki, who at this time in TNA was doing a Rock gimmick.
He was literally The Rock.
Yeah. So they said that with that gimmick, it was unlikely he was going to catch the eye of WWE people. They mentioned the fact that Elliot Skipper was already cut from developmental, and so he's unlikely to go back. Saying that Kid Cash should have gotten a chance because of his ability, but his reputation had worked against him, and he was a lot older than most people think. He does eventually end up in WWE, though,
He
for a
does
short
become
run.
Cruiserweight Champion, I'm almost sure.
Yeah. They mentioned this guy called Tweet, or like I can't remember what his first name was, but it was the guy that was the Wall in WCW.
Okay, Malice?
Yeah, he was Malice. Yeah, Malice in TNA. But they said that they didn't really need another floundering big guy when they already had the Big Show in Albert.
Damn, Meltzer.
And the only other one that he mentioned potentially had a real future in WWE was Monty Brown.
Monty Brown should have been such a big deal. Monty Brown is. I mentioned this the other day. Like, I saw him. I was young enough to still believe that any wrestler on TV must have been a big deal. But, like, Monty Brown is legitimately. He was good for what he could do. And he at least gets a WrestleMania match. I don't know how many people can say that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the thing that Meltzer held against him here is the fact that he was already 32 years old. So, and they were in the kind of the epoch in WWE of signing people young for developmental. Rico being the only real obvious exceptions to that.
Golly, I mean, look at nowadays. 32s, you're like a baby in WWE.
So that's kind of the big news stories that are out of the way. So let's look at what Raw have been up to. Starting with the ratings war as always. So after 3 weeks of Raw dominance, SmackDown takes a hit back here. So for the 15th of August edition of SmackDown, it's 3.99. So that's a good 0.4 step up, almost 0.5 step up from the previous week. Whereas Raw only managed a 3.8, which is still a step up from the previous week, but it's not enough to beat SmackDown on this occasion.
Well, I think that Raw at this point is starting to stagger. You know, Raw is in a place where they're going to start merging belts really soon, and they're going to, you know, really cut down the fat, and it's going to become the Triple H show. Whereas SmackDown is about to become the land of opportunity. And I know they used that line a few years ago, but at this point, it really was the land of opportunity.
So the main event of this edition of Raw was The Rock, Undertaker, Booker T, and Goldust versus Triple H and the Un-Americans, with Test actually scoring a pinfall over the Undertaker.
Because much like Rey Mysterio last week with Kurt Angle, we have to build SummerSlam.
Yep, so Test would be taking on the Undertaker at SummerSlam 2002. So that's their way of building up, and this is also where we mentioned last week, that famous post-match segment where everyone tried to get Undertaker to do a spinneroonie.
Something to note here, and especially we just watched Global Warming, which is features Rock, Brock, and Triple H in the main event. This episode of Raw featured Rock and Triple H on opposite ends of an 8-man tag, and the next week episode is a bit historic in that it will feature the final Rock and Triple H one-on-one match ever. So, end of an era here as we're going towards SummerSlam.
Yeah, obviously they had plans around about WrestleMania 32 time, I believe it was, to have The Rock versus Triple H at some point, but those plans never came to fruition. So these are the last few matches that where we see The Rock against Triple H, one of the biggest feuds of the 2000s. The early 2000s, or 2000 itself.
And it really says how fast the business used to move at that time.
Now it's just crawling at a snail's pace.
I mean, like, we still, on television today, we're still talking about, hey, what is, Randy versus Big Show, whereas, like, we never saw another Rock and Triple H match ever again.
So Matt Hardy attacked Jeff Hardy during Jeff Hardy's match with RVD.
That's unfortunate.
Matt was leaving Raw to join SmackDown, which we're also talking about in this edition. Stacey Keibler made her debut on Raw, dancing with her skirt off on the Raw top of the Raw announce table.
Boy, full circle for her, Miss Hancock.
So there was an ongoing angle that had been taking place for several weeks where Chris Nowinski was trying to take Molly Holly's virginity. So this continued in this edition. I don't think it never really culminates, as it were.
You know what's funny about that is, as cringy as that sounds, they're the perfect two people to do it, and it actually probably could have resulted in a very wholesome bit of television. You know,
I think yeah. Well, I guess so. But I think there was a segment where Chris Nowinski at one point spoke to Spike Dudley, because obviously they'd done the story where Spike Dudley and Molly Holly had been together. And so Chris Nowinski basically just goes up to her and asks him, did he ever pork Molly Holly?
Oh, fuck. Oh, man, come on.
I don't know whether he used that terminology explicitly, but I thought
I'm sure he might have, because it's 2002.
Yeah. And Spike basically says that it's none of his business, and that kind of leads into a few matches between Nowinski and Spike Dudley.
And in real life, Molly Holly did not actually have sex for the entirety of her WWE run. She was a virgin until marriage, which came much after her WWE run.
Yeah, I think that's probably why they gave her this gimmick in the first place.
Probably to pick on her. But, what a patron saint. What an oddball for the wrestling industry. Molly Holly. What a saint.
There was also the emergence of the Mini Dust character, a miniature version of Goldust.
Hey, did you know that Austin Powers Gold Member was recently in theaters featuring Mini?
I know, it's they like to hop on trends. At least they're hopping on trends a couple of weeks or maybe a month after it had been released, rather than several years down the line, as they would do in more recent editions of Raw and SmackDown.
And at least this was a tasteful play on Mini-Me, unlike when Mini-Me passed away. Shout out to Jinder Mahal.
So that's kind of what Raw's up to. So it doesn't sound, again, like the most entertaining episode overall. So let's talk about a show which is a lot more entertaining, which is the August 15th, 2002 edition of SmackDown. The Key Arena.
It's my 9th birthday tomorrow. What are you getting?
Well, it's not actually your 9th birthday. Tomorrow it's your.
Yeah. It'll be my 27th birthday. Wait, still, what are you getting me, Cal?
I'm getting you content.
Well, thank you.
Getting you content for all the wonderful listeners out there. My present to you is a present to everyone else. Because I know that's what you'd want, because you're a very giving guy.
I accept that present.
And I'll probably throw some socks in or whatever. I'll buy you a Smark Out Moment mask or something.
Thank you.
You can get them from the TeePublic and Redbubble stores. Obviously, just throw a cheap plug in there.
There you go.
Everyone go there and buy Rob a mask for his birthday.
That's right. You guys could buy me a mask for my birthday. I'll accept it for being late, because obviously it's tomorrow.
But we're here in the Key Arena in Seattle, Washington. And the show kicks off with Brock Lesnar in Hulkamania shirt, accompanied by a very delighted Paul Heyman. So the announcers announced that it's going to be Lesnar versus Rikishi later in the night. Lesnar does the whole mocking, ripping the shirt off in the same way that Hogan would do. So they're really reveling in the victory. They're hammering it home for everything that it's worth. Heyman does what?
Should.
What are you saying?
As they should, because this is the biggest victory of Brock Lesnar's career.
Oh, absolutely. Heyman is just this is Heyman more like the Heyman nowadays, where he's really hammering home the point. He's emphasizing every word. He's emphasizing how Lesnar is more man than anybody else to end Hulk Hogan's career. But then he mentions that even though he used Hulk Hogan as a stepping stone, which I thought was such a brilliant line. It's the fact that beating Hogan, ending that legendary career is one thing, but he's used it as a stepping stone to become WWE champion. Just makes it even more just hammering it home.
Because it's still, and this is what I love about the Ruthless Aggression era. It's all about being champion.
I have to say this one thing, that this build to Lesnar Rock is one of the greatest WWE Championship builds that I can recall ever seeing. because
We
it's
hear a lot of hype about sports-centric presentation.
mm,
This is a sports-centric build, man. I love this build to this match.
but it still has elements of just the pure sports entertainment aspects of it. But it's interesting nowadays that when you see somebody earn the number one contendership in like a one-off match or a tournament, that whole thing's just built around that one tournament. It doesn't really drag any real animosity between them. Whereas this one, it's between Lesnar obviously gets elevated to that point because he wins King of the Ring, but The Rock and Lesnar are using this as a platform to say which one of them is just the better man and is the better athlete and the better fighter. It's very UFC-like almost in that way.
Yeah, and it's really ahead of its time.
So Heyman says that the blood of Rock's hands will be on Lesnar's hands. The blood of Rock will be on Lesnar's hands at SummerSlam, just like Hogan's blood was. Lesnar screams into the microphone that he'll end the Rock's reign at SummerSlam. He's very one-note Sid-like at this point, but he's still speaking for himself.
Definitely very Sid-like.
Rikishi comes out wearing a head-to-toe green outfit, which was something.
Rikishi in this era is my favorite thing. It's like he's getting a lot of weird play. Like I have not gotten over the stink face to Devon Dudley and never will because like Rikishi in this era is just fantastic.
So Heyman threatens Rikishi and warns him not to get into the ring. Rikishi smiles, he pops the Seattle crowd, says that he'll make Lesnar and Heyman kiss his ass tonight.
Of course.
Rikishi and Brock brawl for a bit. Rikishi clotheslines Lesnar out the ring. Heyman pleads and begs Rikishi to stay away, but Rikishi sits him in the corner and tries to do the stink face, but Lesnar manages to drag him out of the ring. We'll talk more about how this how this continues going forward, but let's just say it was all worth it in the end.
Oh yeah.
Let's put it this way: Heyman's writing this shit, and he is willing to put his body on the line to make this good content.
In many, many ways.
So the first match of the show itself is a six-man tag, which is the odd couple pairing of the Hurricane, Shannon Moore, and Hardcore Holly.
Do you think Bob Holly listens to boy bands?
I mean, I'm pretty sure they probably tried to get Tank Abbott to join instead. Hardcore Holly could be the modern day Tank Abbott, but they're taking on Billy, Chuck, and Rico. So they show a clip of Hardcore Holly and Rico getting into altercations on Velocity, because still got to plug that C show right there.
Absolutely.
Billy immediately attacks Hardcore. Holly gets the edge with his drop kick, the best drop kick in the business, according to Taz.
Oh well, this is way before Okada, so all out.
Yeah, I think he's been superseded since by both Okada and AJ Styles.
I'd throw Ziggler in there.
He's got a good drop kick as well. So there's an interesting combination backslide and leg drop by Moore and Hurricane, which I think is very free count. Where I think it's Hurricane does a backslide and Moore jumps onto the guy with a leg drop. It's like, okay, it's interesting. It just doesn't actually pin the guy off the back of that, but that's fine. There's a wishbone leg split at one point by Billy and Chuck. Hurricane reverses a tilt the world slam into the eye of the Hurricane. Moore makes the hot tag, all hell breaks loose, everyone's fighting everybody. Moore leaps off the middle rope, but he's caught into a powerbomb position by Chuck. Moore gets down, but Chuck distracts the referee so Billy can hit the one and only. The one and only. Billy's still doing that, and Chuck gets the win.
I like the one and only. I thought it was a simple move, but it was
the class.
Yeah, well, listen, when Billy Gunn does it, it's much better than when Jinder Mahal does it, sir.
Yeah, at least he keeps hold of it when he's doing it, whereas like Mahal just drops Shinsuke Nakamura in midair.
Mahal drops a lot of things, Callum.
Yeah. Drops viewership. Drops viewership, right?
Absolutely.
So it's a decent six-man tag, typically fast-paced as things were in that time, but nothing super special to really go back on. The heels then go and attack more. Attack more. Until Holly and Hurricane make the save, and they clear the ring of the heels. And by the time they've just about cleared the ring, Matt Hardy's music is hit, and he's charging the ring. And so by the time he gets in, the heels have already been dealt with, but he's celebrating like he just helped clear the entire ring of everyone. He hugs Hurricane and Moore because they're his guys. just shakes the hand of Hulk Holly and does a lot of posing in the corner. Holly doesn't look impressed at all. But Hardy's the new guy from Raw over to SmackDown.
And you know what? I think this is the beginning of Matt Hardy finding himself, which he would apparently do several times over.
Yeah, this is the first time that he really found himself with a gimmick. So, backstage, Stephanie is staring daggers into Dawn Marie. So, Dawn apologises, but Stephanie tells her to shut up because she's angry about the fact that essentially what we explained last week is that Stacey got hold of the contract, passed it over to Bischoff. It was RVD's contract. That means that they found out that there's going to be an Intercontinental Championship rematch clause. And so Chris Benoit now has to defend the Intercontinental Championship against RVD at SummerSlam, which puts SmackDown's hold over the title at risk.
You know what, though? You shouldn't be pissed at Dawn Marie, and I think that's just a bad businesswoman decision by Stephanie to not see that she was tricked by Stacey and just be mad at Stacey.
So Dawn apologizes, and Stephanie says that at least Matt Hardy's signed, and they managed to get commercial time on Raw, because on that episode of Raw that we just mentioned, they actually booked a slot where SmackDown was advertised.
That's brilliant.
And Bischoff got annoyed at the production team about why that was, but they said that we can't do it. They bought commercial time, and that will be readdressed later on in the main event, but we'll get to that as well.
I wish that we paid attention to detail like that nowadays.
Oh yeah, I wish the brand split had been more like this at the start of it, really, rather than just like nowadays, just like, well, we get mad at ourselves at SummerSlam at a very point in November, like at a particular point in November, we just get angry at the other side for no reason.
Well, because it's brand versus brand, and this year they didn't even try. They were just like, hey, guess what? We're going to do it.
So Stephanie tells Dawn to start dressing more professionally, so that gets a lot of loud boos from the crowd.
As it would.
And that if she screws up again, that she'll be fired. Then she orders Dawn to go get Chris Benoit. So that's the segment. Stephanie is quite a presence in this one, but it's not super over the top, so I'm kind of okay with it.
Yeah, and it's good to see that the training that she had as GM of SmackDown really prepped her for the business role that she has today.
Absolutely. Edge arrives, announces that he'll be teaming with Rey Mysterio tonight. That's it for the segment. Then in a segment shown during the commercial break, Matt Hardy is with the Hurricane Moore and Holly, saying how great that moment was, saying that he requires no thanks for saving them earlier, even though he did nothing. And
He's amazing.
And he quotes the immortal line. He says SmackDown is now ready for Matt Hardy version 1.
Awesome. So we're about to go on a fun ride.
Matt Hardy is, without question, one of the most entertaining things we're going to see through now until the end of this series. The whole Matt facts and everything like that is just this is where I started to watch Matt Hardy and just think, and because obviously I started watching wrestling around about this time, so this is why I see so much in Matt Hardy that I think he's the better Hardy.
Oh, but he absolutely is. Like Jeff, don't get me wrong, Jeff is exactly that. He's an enigma. But Matt Hardy is the better
character
and the better creator, really.
So Benoit enters Stephanie's office, she apologising for her staff screwing up, but she says that she knows Benoit will beat RVD and make him tap like he made The Rock tap out 2 weeks ago. And so in a make-up gift, he's giving Benoit the main event against The Rock, and she utters the phrase, "Screw The Rock, I want you to make him tap."
Well, he is on the way out, champ.
Oh yeah, he is. But obviously at this point in time in story, he's the Undisputed Champion, and she's basically favoriting the heel Chris Benoit, the Intercontinental Champion, by saying that she wants him to basically go out there and destroy The Rock.
She's so mad about this hold over the Intercontinental Champion. Well, to be fair, she really did, get the Undisputed Champion after The Rock left. So maybe she was mad at The Rock.
Yeah, well, I think it's a case of, at this point in time, at the very least until what we'll see going forward, but right now, the Undisputed Champion jumps between shows anyway. So she can't have a firm grasp on the Undisputed Champion, but she can have a firm grasp on the tag team. Not tag team. She's already lost the tag team titles. A firm grasp on the Intercontinental Championship. So she's desperate to keep it on Benoit and make Benoit happy. And so Benoit talks about how he's going to make The Rock moan, whimper, and squeal.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
usually. Okay, I don't have a problem with Benoit matches and stuff. I don't usually cringe. This one was hard.
Yeah, it's a little bit. He's
Basically
very
because of his
intense at this point.
delivery.
Yeah, he's very intense at this point. Our old buddy Mark Lloyd is back, and he's interviewing Kurt Angle.
You know what I love about this is, do they only have Mark Lloyd? Like nowadays, we have like 2 or 3 backstage correspondents for each brand, and I feel like Mark Lloyd is just working overtime here.
Well, at least we know who it is all the time, rather than just have like generic blonde or dark-haired
That's
girl.
fair. Like, yeah.
So he interviews Kurt Angle, bringing up Mysterio's victory over him last week. Angle says the victory doesn't mean anything because Mysterio's a cheater, so the win doesn't count because he wasn't the legal man. He makes a joke about how you need to be this high to fight him because obviously Mysterio's short. And it's funny because Angle isn't actually particularly tall.
Yeah, he's not like much better than. He's not like much taller than Rey Mysterio.
Mysterio arrives, challenges Angle to a match at SummerSlam. Angle laughs, thinking he's joking, but then when he realizes it's serious, he says, "What are they going to do? Dwarf tossing?"
Oh God.
I know.
You know, this is amazing.
So Mysterio says that he wants a match to shut Angle up once and for all. Angle says that he can't stand little men with attitudes, which again is just. This is why I love Angle, because he's so self-oblivious in this character.
For some reason, it really works when he's tone deaf. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Just because he thinks that he's like a beacon of perfection and Americana and everything like that, and he points out other people's flaws, not realizing that he carries the exact same flaws. It's just like perfect for his character.
It's some of the best character work done in this era of SmackDown.
As Mysterio leaves, Angle tells him to get Dorothy, the Tin Man, and the other Munchkins to let them know that Angle will kick his butt at SummerSlam. So as Mysterio leaves, Mark Henry arrives, calls Angle a little man himself. Angle says that if he's world's strongest man moniker is because of Henry's weightlifting or for his body odor.
Wow.
So Angle challenges for a match tonight, and Henry accepts. So this is the match we have next: Kurt Angle versus Mark Henry. So we saw a taste of this a couple of weeks back, but we're going to get to see an actual finish to this one. So Taz talks about how you won't see Olympians on Raw like this. Notes how Henry and Angle were both teammates at the 1996 Olympics. Henry as a weightlifter, Angle as a wrestler. So that's a nice little backstory for these two.
And it's very factual. I'm surprised that's something that they haven't like beaten over the head in the coming years that they would play.
Henry at one point lifts Angle up into a military press and then just a sheer drop to the mat below. He hits the avalanche at one point, and he gets up caught briefly in the ropes, which I thought might have like hurt Angle's neck pretty badly if he hadn't gone through smoothly. But after that move, Henry's limping on his left ankle. So I do like it how sometimes they do the little gimmicks where the babyface injures himself by doing a move.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I like it in terms of like, is that good or does that make him look like an idiot?
It's good. I think for Henry, you can get around it because it's like, he doesn't know his own strength, he doesn't know his own abilities, he just sort of, he's human. He can have those kinds of errors. It's not like his presentation is completely dependent on, being smooth in the ring.
So once Angle spots the weakness, he's like a shark that smells blood in the water, and his attack on Henry's leg is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Like, at one point he hits, like, Henry's bouncing off the ropes and coming towards him, and he does this massive, like, linebacker tackle to his legs. And Henry just goes absolutely flying. And it's just Angle just throwing his body on the line to just take Henry out. At one point, Henry manages to kick Angle while he's sending him flying out of the ring. He manages to get him up for the gorilla press slam, but Angle then escapes the power slam, applies the ankle lock, and this time Henry is forced to tap out. So Angle gets the victory. It was a good match. I honestly, because it was shorter, this is better than their 2006 Royal Rumble match.
Well, not like it had a hard time beating that one, but
No,
this was a good match. And again, it's amazing that just a year ago, Angle was in a cowboy hat singing Jimmy Carter corner. I don't care.
Yeah, he definitely looks a bit more of the wrestling machine right now. Even though he's still cracking jokes in interviews and stuff, he's still, when he's between the ropes, he's all business.
And he's one of the best in the world. At this point, he might be the top name in the world.
So Mysterio dives in with a Hurricane Rana off the top rope after the match, followed by a 619. In the whole exchange, Angle is somehow busted open on the top of his head and he starts bleeding pretty profusely.
This was 2002 Angle. He bleeds very awkwardly.
I'm just wondering where it happened. Like, I assume he hits either like his head gets scraped pretty hard against the mat, or he hits it. Like maybe he catches it on some part of Mysterio's tire or something like that. But it just seemed like a really odd place to start bleeding from.
Yeah, because it almost looks like he's bleeding.
But why would you
maybe
blade
he
there?
hit maybe he hit a really rough spot in the ring or something.
There's a chance that maybe he'd already had stitches in that part from a previous match or anything like that, and they just got opened up. But yeah, it just seemed odd. But,
yeah, that might have been one of the most odd moments of blood I've ever seen in WWE because nothing, again, unless he hit a nail in the ring or something.
So we move on now to Brock Lesnar versus Rikishi, which was advertised earlier. Rikishi is trying to do it for The Rock here by beating Brock Lesnar, or at least softening him up for the main event at SummerSlam.
He's not all in green this time.
No, now he looks more like in his regular attire. They have a stare down. They do this. I love this because it's a callback spot. And I've spoken earlier, I think, in the Vengeance Patreon special about how SmackDown and Paul Heyman's writing always does callbacks. And this was a really good one where Lesnar tries to do that clothesline that he did to Henry earlier when they were doing the whole "can you actually knock me down" with the shoulder barge thing. But this time, Rikishi, because he's seen that, he's learned from it, he ducks it and nails one of his own. So again, you'd have to
learning.
Well, it's just a case of it doesn't mean anything. It's just a cool spot if you're just watching and you're not paying much attention. But if you're actually looking at the little details and you watch and you're keeping a close eye on things, you get really, really rewarded. And that's what I love about this sort of presentation.
Can you imagine Brock Lesnar actually just taking the freaking stink face spot?
That I can't imagine a real top main event guy unless he's I could see Triple H taking it, and I could see because he's a bit of just a classic heel like Ric Flair. I could see Ric Flair taking it and people like that, but Brock, you don't do that sort of thing to Brock.
Yeah, and they were very, very, very short of protecting him here.
So Lesnar at one point applies a Fujiwara armbar, a bit of early MMA knowledge getting in there, but Rikishi reaches the rope. At one point, Rikishi starts to take over with a few bits and pieces until Lesnar hits a massive belly-to-belly suplex on a 350-pound man. That was impressive. Samoan drop, belly-to-back suplex, and Lesnar is left in the stink face position. Heyman rushes the ring, and so Rikishi sends him in the corner instead. And so Rikishi kicks Lesnar out of the ring when he. Oh yeah, it was a cool spot where Heyman is set up for the stink face. You think that Lesnar's going to come in and interrupt like he did earlier, but Rikishi kicks Lesnar in the face, kicks him out the ring, and this leaves Heyman completely vulnerable for the stink face.
And he's screaming.
He is going absolutely ballistic. He is screaming right into Rikishi's asshole.
Only in wrestling does that sentence make sense.
Which is amazing. It's just a case of you can imagine that he's screaming so loud into it that if Rikishi opened his mouth, then Heyman's screams coming out of there as well.
Yeah, really. And
so
some people, I've seen Stephanie take a stink face, and it's not in the face. Heyman was pretty much face in the ass.
Yeah, so Rikishi
good
backs
for
up.
Paul Heyman there.
Yeah, he does a good job selling for it. So Rikishi backs the ass up. Heyman sells the ass in his face tremendously. The crowd goes absolutely crazy because they love seeing Heyman getting beaten up. But in this time, Lesnar dives in, immediately hits the F5 afterwards, and gets the pin. So this match was good for what it was. It was short. It made Lesnar look good for beating an established star, big star like Rikishi. But everyone got a happy moment of seeing Heyman get an ass in the face.
And perfect F5. Small thing, but beautiful F5. And Lesnar looks great, even though Heyman looks like a joke.
Absolutely, but that's what Heyman's role is, to make. He takes all the brunt of the jokes and things like that, so Lesnar looks strong. The role of a good manager.
I love seeing the match graphics that appeared after this with the
Mm.
little, you know how they used to do it. It had like the GIF motion, and those things used to get me so hyped. And
Yeah,
I
they
also
were
think,
really good.
was this the first like Los Guerreros teaming in WWE?
I believe so. It's definitely the first time in WWE they teamed up together. They didn't because Eddie Guerrero missed the entire invasion due to his suspension or his firing, should I say? But so this is the first time they've teamed up together in WWE. I don't even know how many times they even teamed together in WCW. Probably a couple of times, but I can't remember anything in particular.
Speaking of first times, we're about to see the first time appearance of a long-running SmackDown gag, Callum.
I think you're gonna have to fill me in on that one.
Oh, well, it was the beginning of Funaki,
Oh
SmackDown's
yes.
#1 announcer.
Oh, absolutely. But I was talking about the fact that on my notes, my next note just says a quick shot of Tory Wilson stretching backstage.
Oh yeah, but that's not the first appearance of this. This is
No.
many appearances of that. I was actually looking at that, like, obviously they you just get so used to that if you're somebody like a Tory, but the constant sexualization, man, it's
Well, yeah, just like imagine what the. Okay, so your motivation for this is that we're just about to go to an ad break, so we just want pictures of you stretching in as absolutely gratifying a way as
so it's
possible for
like,
the male
you're
viewers.
stretching and you're getting ready to wrestle, but really we just need you, like,
Bend
bend
over.
over. It's like it's
Like,
so wild.
yeah. So, as you mentioned, SmackDown's #1 announcer Funaki, who will again be a recurring character on this show. So, I guess that just the joke is he's Asian, so he can't speak English very well. So let's make him an interview guy,
Uh,
because racism.
yeah, and then we've got Nydia saying "touch my ass" because
Slut.
2002.
Yeah, just the idea of like, so Nidia doesn't want to get properly interviewed about the match or anything like that. She just wants to talk about how voluptuous her breasts are and how firm her ass is. So Nidia
And
encourages
credit to
Funaki.
Funaki, who's just like not trying to do any of that.
Yeah, he's a gentle soul. He doesn't want to touch Nidia's ass because he's basically saying like, "What about Jamie Noble?" She says, "Oh, Jamie would encourage him to do that." So then she tries to make him grab her boobs, and then there's a load of shouting heard backstage. And just before we get to see any sort of touching or groping, Devon is sent crashing through a door by Batista, who then just shouts at him saying, "That there's your respect." And so we have, well, what would actually, which most people would assume is the total breakup of the team, because I assume when you send one of your teammates through a door, that's probably the end of it. But they will actually be teaming up together next week, so slow
Well,
burn on this one.
because respect,
Yeah, absolutely. Just it's a slow burn. It's just like once you can get over throwing a teammate through a door and move on past that. Rob, if I threw you through a door, would you forgive me?
I tried to listen a few times to see what they were saying, and the only word I could make out was respect. So I guess the idea just being Devon wanted more because he's the mentor, and Batista should fall in line.
You didn't answer my question.
What was your question?
Would you throw if I threw you through a door? Would you forgive me?
Oh, well, Callum, if you threw me through a door, I'm sure you have your reasons. You're not a violent guy. But I think I would forgive you. And then we do this podcast again next week, and then I end up, never doing the podcast again.
Okay, cool. Well, at least we're now on the same page there. But so we have Tory Wilson versus Nydia. I think so. Tory's accompanied by Billy Kidman. Nydia's joined by Noble. Cole talks about how Tory and Kidman are quote unquote buddies.
And that was a little fucked up. Like, yeah, oh, it's her buddy, her husband.
Cole says that this match will be a cat fight when Taz says that it's going to be a tomato fight because Taz is all about those tomatoes.
Yeah. I think the only thing worse than a cat, these two women are going to have a wrestling match and it'll be a cat fight. And then Taz goes, no, it's a tomato fight. Okay.
I think this match isn't too bad for the Divas era at that time. Torrie is obviously very weak in the ring. Nydia's
Yeah.
okay. Nydia's okay. So at one point, Torrie slides out of the ring, to slap Noble, then dodges Nidia's baseball slide, hits Noble instead. Noble then grabs Torrie climbing the turnbuckle. Kidman stops him. As the ref deals with Kidman, Torrie hits a neck breaker in the ring, but is then clotheslined by Noble, so she takes a pretty big bump off that.
There's that men on women violence again.
Yep, Nydia makes the cover and gets the win. But even before her music can hit, Kane's pyro goes off.
Oh, because he's coming back.
Yeah, he's coming back, and there's a short video package about his return. So at this point in time, it was very much up in the air as to whether Kane was going to Raw or SmackDown, which comes across both on the TV show and behind the scenes. There were many that had the inkling that Kane was actually going to be on SmackDown, but they decided that in the end, by post SummerSlam, that he'd end up on the Raw side.
So the era of Kane that we're about to experience, and we won't actually experience it at all because he does end up on Raw. I love Slow Chemical, and I think like Kane becomes a more agile and more human-like character, as is apparent with Katie Pickton. But like looking back on it, that mask is not a favorite.
No, so his mask only starts to cover about half his face going forward, and you show more of his chin and things like that. You know, the hideously disfigured face with his chin, which is totally fine.
So now, I recently read his book, and I thought it was brilliant, and this is something I missed, I guess, as a child. But the idea was that no, he's not disfigured. He's just mentally, so scarred mentally that he thinks he's disfigured and can't look at himself in the mirror. I missed that as a child and actually think that that's brilliant.
I think it's a good excuse.
It's a great excuse because they decided to unmask him, but I think it's brilliant that they, bothered to say that, on the air.
So backstage, Eddie and Chavo are on the phone to family, says all the family need to watch this thing go forward. He just reels off a few names. And then Chavo says that Edge will regret spearing Eddie. And Eddie says that Edge just got lucky. Like, he didn't actually spear him properly, he just got a fluke. And talks about how Edge doesn't have the charisma they have, and Eddie shows off his fabulous smile.
Yep.
So he's still got, even though he's very intense right now, he's still showing a bit of the Latino charisma of what you'd expect from like the Latino Heat China days, that sort of thing. But as we mentioned earlier, this is the first time that Los Guerreros were teamed together in WWE, and they're taking on Edge and Rey Mysterio. And
it
I hope you enjoyed this.
Because Chavo still looks very much like a babyface here. And obviously anything the Guerreros do first has to have Mysterio in it. And Edge is a great fourth man here because obviously Edge is one of the best workers on SmackDown.
So this is 4 of the SmackDown 6 in action here, and a tag team match that we'll see a couple of times down the line. So hopefully this is a good indicator of how things will go. There's a sign in the crowd, Eddie Guerrero washes my dishes. Because Mexican racism.
Yep, because... fucking...
Yep, 2002. To be fair, I'd say 2002, this is 2020 as well.
Yeah, but at least, it's 2020 as well, but now we're very much self-aware that it's wrong.
Yeah. At one point, Eddie sends Edge into the barricade when the referee's distracted. This allows him to just pile on with the vicious aggressiveness that he's been showing. Edge makes a tag. Mysterio immediately hits a springboard seat and sent onto Eddie. Then there's a stiff powerbomb by Eddie to Mysterio. Eddie and Mysterio did always do that, stiff powerbomb spot. Where he just plants Mysterio right down.
I've always been told you're not any more vicious to anyone in the ring than you are your friends because your friends will forgive you. So
yeah,
that must be what that is.
So backdrop by Chavo into a helo by Guerrero onto the back of Mysterio. One point he hits a pump handle breakup. Eddie knows, like you say, Eddie and Mysterio are friends. He knows what he can do to somebody of Mysterio's size, and he's taking full advantage of that. There was a great acrobatic sequence by Mysterio and Chavo ending with a spinning heel kick. This allows him to make a hot tag actually, before the hot tag he made, Eddie knocks Edge off the apron, but Mysterio gets there at second attempt. Edge with the action-packed comeback. He's always really great with the hot tag. He's got a lot of tag team experience, obviously. until he gets nailed by a brainbuster by Eddie Guerrero. I was amazed that, like, because obviously Edge is not like super big, but he's tall. So seeing a guy of that size against Guerrero going up for the brainbuster was a pretty good visual.
And I would also suggest this is one of the last times Edge hits a monkey flip.
Oh yeah, probably as well. Maybe we'll see a couple more going forward, but they'll be pretty
But,
more sporadic, I
as
imagine.
we head into the later years, I don't think Edge is doing that.
Mysterio prevents the frog splash into 619 to Chavo, but Angle arrives, applies the ankle lock to Mysterio on the floor, so another DQ. Brawl breaks out, Edge spears Eddie into the barricade. In the ring, Angle applies the ankle lock to Mysterio, and Chavo drop kicks Mysterio in the face. Always got that
Good
vibe.
moment, though. Come on. Like, you might as well, if you're here, you might as well have that moment.
Edge gets back in, spears both Chavo and Angle, and saves Rey Mysterio, so babyfaces get the upper hand again.
So I know that, like, Edge did the spear for many, many years after this. By the way, Angle's either still bleeding or reopened the cut.
Yeah.
I know that Edge did the spear for many years, but here he's really snapping with it. And, like, I think it makes it a little more impactful than it would be in later years.
Yeah. I guess it's probably just more the speed, and at this point in time, he's pre-broken neck.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, he doesn't break his neck until 2003. So this is time where Edge is a little less. He can afford to be a little less careful in the ring, let's say.
Yeah, he's still very reckless because I think he thinks at this point he's indestructible.
So there's a recap of the Global Warning event, which obviously this is a good time at least to plug the Patreon. So as part of the Patreon, the $10 tier, you get Darkcast episodes, and we're doing the Darkcasts on special editions of the Paul Heyman podcast based around the pay-per-view events that have taken place. So we have done a pay-per-view review of the Global Warning show that took place in Australia on August the 13th. So it's a show that isn't sort of widely remembered or brought back very often. So if you haven't checked it out before, I'd urge you to do it on obviously WWE Network, and you can listen to our thoughts about it as well by checking on the Patreon. And later on this month, we'll also have the SummerSlam 2002 review as well, which is one definitely not to be missed.
Yeah, I would argue that Darkcast here, man, it's very much worth the $10 a month. Not only do you get what we're doing here, you get extra bits from Tony and myself. One day we'll just decide, hey, it's 2 a.m. Let's do a Darkcast and talk about, our favorite Bret Hart matches. And you get all that fun content. Also, you get a recap of the 2020 Sexiest Superstars tournament. So if you're interested in that after watching Tory Wilson stretch, there's more of that content there for you on the Smark Out Moment Patreon.
So The Rock has an interview with Mark Lloyd about the match with Chris Benoit.
Oh, Mark Lloyd.
Mark Lloyd brings up the fact that he wants to, like, how Benoit wants to make Rock moan, squeal, whatever. Rock says he doesn't even know what the word squeal means. And then he tells Mark Lloyd to bend over in front of him. And Lloyd does it, and Rock just, like, he bugs out of his eyes. He just goes, "What in the blue hell are you doing? Get up, get up, get up." And Rock was telling him to bend over.
Not as good as the coach.
No. Rock tells him that what I meant to say was bend over backwards and tell me what squeal means. And so he just tells Mark Lloyd to leave, which is probably for the best for everyone involved. So he's just got the mic. The crowd is going crazy because it's The Rock, and of course they are.
Hold on. So what you left out a bit there, because not only did he tell him to bend over, but he only told him to bend over after saying, you look like you know what squeal means. Bend over. Like, what?
Yeah, Rock knows how to really pick on these interviewers. At least he didn't call him like Hermie or anything like that.
Oh boy.
Poor Kevin Kelly.
The Rock is the only person who could probably come back today and do this with somebody, and it would be perfectly like, yeah, it's The Rock.
So Rock says he won't tap out twice, then he cuts a promo on Brock Lesnar, sending him a message to just bring it. Then he says it in German, Chinese, and English. In order to emphasize that. As Rock leaves, Lesnar emerges from a door behind him, smirking. From both like him and Bischoff the week prior, just like a lot of guys just lurking at doors, just waiting to come out.
Yeah, this is clearly an accepted form of interaction back in 2002. You're
Yeah,
just sort of there.
only in WWE. So, so The Rock versus Chris Benoit is our main event. It's the Undisputed Champion against the Intercontinental Champion. These two obviously had a pretty great feud in 2000 over the WWF Championship. And this match is great. It's a great main event.
Of course it is. Well, Benoit in 2002 is peak Benoit. Rock in 2002, that I don't recall, but going back, I'm really seeing, is a hell of a workhorse. And this is one of the best matches you could say.
So before the match even kicks off, during The Rock's entrance, a massive banner is dragged through the crowd saying Rock versus Triple H on Raw. So Eric Bischoff has now resorted to guerrilla advertising.
I wish that the 2016 brand split
Was better. Was like this.
Anything like this.
So there's some great classic chain wrestling to start off with, including a leapfrog by The Rock, which gets the crowd on their feet because they don't really see The Rock do a leapfrog often.
I will say that the wild line that they inserted there, talking about the guerrilla marketing, was not very well edited into the show. It just you can clearly tell that they reshot that from the studio.
Yeah, probably, but still, it's you can't be perfect all the time. If you have the opportunity of refilming it and doing that, then you might as well take it. It's better than having a huge mistake, which I assume they'd done at the previous one.
So Benoit's belt here still says WWF Intercontinental Champion. So now I'm going to ask the question: did it just stay that way until October when it goes away?
I presume so. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't have changed it already if they weren't going to. So if they thought, not they planned that far in advance, I don't think they knew that they were going to be vacating the Intercontinental Championship going forward. But I imagine that if all these belts have WWF on them, apart from a couple of them, then why bother changing it?
Do you think that was part of the reasoning that they actually got rid of them? That they were just like, hey, these are outdated. Let's not bother making WWF or WWE variants.
I think that was part of, like, maybe that was an unintended benefit out of it. I think it was more just due to the fact of not even just trying to make the belt seem more important. I think it was just a case of let's just hot shot a few things, like merging championships and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Trying to pop ratings and stuff like that. But back to this great match itself. Benoit hits 5 consecutive German suplexes, ending the 5th one with a bridge. So that was pretty awesome. Benoit just nailing suplexes left and right. Benoit nails a DDT of his own after elbowing out of a rock bottom, and then he goes to the top rope, and he hits his first diving headbutt since returning from injury.
And I really wish he didn't.
Yep. Just once that hit, and once he's done that, obviously it's a cool moment in encapsulation. Like, when you freeze that single moment, it's cool. But the beauty of hindsight, look 5 years down the line and just think, yeah, maybe you should have just stopped doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all wish he would have stopped doing it, but it is one of those signature Benoit spots.
Well, at least maybe he could have just, like, after he, like, the way that he was doing this, like, he thought this was a special match because he's, like, in the WWE Champion, so okay, I'll pull out a diving headbutt for this. But then it just became every week, every night, every house show, you're hitting a diving headbutt.
And several other headbutts in the match.
Yeah, so maybe every now and again he could still have done it and gone away a bit. I mean, Daniel Bryan still uses a diving headbutt every now and again. So it's not the end of the world, but doing it, once you do it once, the urge is to just do it all the time after that.
Yeah, then it just becomes your spot again.
So crowd all participate in the ref's count following a double down spot. Rock does a dragon screw into the sharpshooter, but Benoit gets to the ropes. Rock nips up after a back elbow, hits a spine buster, but before he can do the people's elbow, Lesnar's appeared on the ramp. Rock steps out and they have a stare down, but they're still not touching. That's an important detail, they still haven't touched yet. They're doing a really good job of just building the anticipation. Even though, obviously, as we mentioned in the Dark Cast for the global warning show. That means that they've already touched on a show, but that show wouldn't be broadcast in America until, I believe it didn't go live in that until November or December time.
And again, one of my favorite builds ever.
So this allows Benoit to attack Rock from behind. Crowd chants for Hogan, but Hogan's definitely not showing up. So the crossface is applied, and Brock stares down Rock the exact same way they did 2 weeks ago. But again, great callback and great storytelling. Rock nearly passes out, but he dives to the ropes, and the crowd explodes because he gets to the ropes. The crowd's going absolutely electric, and that just shows that The Rock previously had to tap out, but now he's just shown a bit more grit and determination. He's able to fight out and prove to Lesnar that he's got more fight than he previously expected. So yeah, that was a great moment. Rock gets out of the situation, nails the Rock bottom, and gets the 3 count. So Rock defeats Chris Benoit. Excellent match. The crowd excitement was off the chain, and it ends the segment with Rock and Brock just staring each other down for a couple of minutes as the show closes, but still not touching.
You know, I think, again, fantastic match. I wish we would have gotten more of them through the years.
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead. I was just going to say Rock and Brock is a really great build.
Oh yeah, this build is just absolutely tremendous. I just love the callbacks to it that reward you for being a very attentive fan. And yeah, just this is a great main event to a really good episode of SmackDown. I think the first hour of the show was far too heavy on the talking side of things, with the whole like Dawn Marie and Stephanie and like the tons of interviews and the Rikishi and Brock Lesnar promo earlier, and just a few other bits and pieces. Like there's a big gap in my notes between the first match and the second match. But once the matches actually get started in the second hour, things really start to ramp up. So Angle and Henry's a good match. Edge and Mysterio, Los Guerreros is good before the DQ, and then the main event is just, you should definitely go out of your way and watch that main event. It's great.
Yeah, fantastic match. I would argue, if you watch nothing else, watch a lot of The Rock's matches from this early run, and you get a really big appreciation for him as a worker, because I know he's so over as a character, but like he is a top level guy when he wants to be between the ropes.
So that's it for the August 15th edition. That's the end for episode 8. The only thing to do before we get into some plugs is just to hype up the next show, which will be the Go Home show for SummerSlam, the August 22nd edition. So the main event for that show is going to be The Rock and Edge teaming up against Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero. Yep, that did happen 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. Yep.
Yeah, but it's a good match, so why not check it out? We also have a women's championship match, the final women's championship match that happened on SmackDown for many, many years, with Molly Holly defending against Nydia.
Nidia earned this fight when she beat Tory Wilson in that tremendous wrestling match earlier tonight.
So we have Matt Hardy's first match back since joining SmackDown. We have Kurt Angle versus Billy Kidman in a match that you may never have expected to see, but it's there. And we have Rikishi and John Cena versus the somehow still teaming Reverend Devon and Batista.
Yep.
So some good and bad to look forward to, as always the case. But yeah, we'll look back on the news, look at what Raw's been up to. But yeah, I think it's a good episode to look forward to on the road to SummerSlam, and then following that, we'll be on the Patreon with the SummerSlam 2002 review.
And I could not be more excited.
So that's the end of this edition. The only thing to do, just throw out a few plugs. We've already mentioned the Patreon, so we won't bore you anymore with that. But anything that you can give in terms of whether it's $1, whether it is the Darkcast tier, whether you want to do a Pick Your Poison thing and make us watch something that you wanted to see for many years, then yeah, we'll hand over $50, we'll review whatever you want, and yeah, we'll have it up there on the Patreon for you to watch whenever you're ready. But there's other ways you can support us financially, which is the Redbubble and TeePublic merchandise stores. So just pick up a mask, pick up a t-shirt, pick up a shower curtain, anything that has a Smark Out Moment branding over it can be yours, and it all goes to support Tony and the website and make sure we continue to produce great content like this on a regular basis.
And I will just add to that by saying, if you want to check out any of Tony's other stuff, there's wrestling news, there's Bleacher Report. He is always working overtime in the world of wrestling. And likewise, I am as well. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DeFelice. Check out Fightful, check out WrestleZone, and just click around and there's always something to find from myself or from Tony. And from Callum. Callum, tell him that the great writing that you do.
Okay, well, you can find some of my great writing on the Smark Out Moment website. I'm pretty much exclusively, in terms of my wrestling writing, on the Smark Out Moment website, as long as all the other great writers we have on here. So check out all the weekly articles, check out all the other stuff we're putting out on the website. Check us out on Twitter or on Facebook, all the other social media channels. You can join the Mega Maniacs for just to be among some more like-minded wrestling fans, share a few memes, share a few stories, have a lot of fun there. Obviously, we mentioned with Tony stuff. You can also see what he's doing over on Fanboys Anonymous as well, which is like the sister side where we do the geek culture things. So if you want to join the Patreon for that, or buy some merchandise there, or just check out the website, Tony would be very appreciative of it. And obviously, you can follow me on Twitter at Wigmeister14. And I think that covers all the plugs, and that rounds off episode 8, should I say. So thank you very much for listening to this Champion versus Champion edition. We hope to see you for episode 9. But for now, this has been another Smark Out Moment, and we are being counted out.